If you're in elementary, I would say probably third or fourth grade, on up, you need to listen to me. Because you will understand what I'm saying here. Do you know what a homonym is? Now you might say, well, I know the word, but have to give me a little bit of time to think if I can remember what exactly a homonym is. Well, let me give you a couple of examples. If I said right, do you know what I'm talking about? How about if I said duck? Do you know what I'm talking about? Or if I said, maybe if I used the word jam. What is he talking about? Because it could very well be that I would say the word sink. And you would say, well, he's talking about what's in the kitchen. No, I'm talking about going underwater. And that duck I was talking about is not the quacker. It's the thing that I do when I get down like this. You see, those are homonyms. They're words that are spelled the same, and they're pronounced the same, but they have different meanings. Totally different meanings. So this morning, as we look at our lesson this morning, I want to look at another homonym with you. And the word is manifest. Manifest. Manifest can mean one of two things. It can either be a physical list, typically of traveling passengers, the manifest. And here's someone who does cruises and helps people get set. She knows what a manifest is. You need to know who's on the list. Oh, I might have a head count, but the manifest is the physical list and it tells me exactly who's there. Manifest could also mean to make something easy to understand, to be clear in its meaning. And we read that actually in text. If you were in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, you would hear what Paul says when he says, knowing the fear of the Lord, we persuade men, but we are made manifest to God. We are made clear and it's understood who we are. Made manifest. However, this morning, what I want us to do is I want to take that word and I want to apply both meanings to it. The list, the passenger list of who is in the boat. You just read the passage, and you know it well, I know you do. You may have your favorite to be Matthew. It may be that you like Luke's account. We're going to look at Mark's account of this storm and who's in the boat. But I also want us to take it and look at it and hopefully make it a little bit more clear for us to understand what is happening and why was this event recorded in the Holy Scriptures for us today. So let's consider who's in the boat. Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. I will not reread it with you, but I want you to notice a couple of things. It doesn't take us long to realize as Jesus is going across, the Scripture, and Mark is the only one that tells us this, tells us that there were not only Jesus and his disciples, but there were other boats with them. Verse 36 says that there's more than just one boat on the ocean, on the river, on the lake. There's more than just Jesus and his disciples. There are other boats who are with them. Hold that in your head for a second. Consider this. Were those boats affected by the storm? Or was it just Jesus and his disciples who got the gales and the fierce winds? You know the answer to that. All those boats are affected by it. All of those boats are feeling the waves fill up their boat. All of those boats are feeling the pressure of the wind. All of those boats and the passengers, the manifest list inside those boats, are just as scared as the disciples. You see, I think it's interesting that when Jesus calmed the storm for his disciples, he also calmed the storm for all the others. I hadn't thought about that before. I hadn't realized and put into place that all those people who are dying and wondering how is this going to happen, when Jesus said, knock it off. And he told the ocean and he told the wind, settle down, get quiet, hush, or peace, or quiet. That all those other people were affected as well. Oh, I'm glad this thing stopped, but how did it stop like that? Because the Creator told it to. So when I consider that, that makes sense to me. But then, Jesus, when he rebuked the wind, it says that he said to the sea. You know, there was a time I used to think that when Jesus said, hush, be still. Yes, he was talking to the elements, but I almost thought maybe he's talking more to his disciples. You guys settle down. But he wasn't. He was saying to the sea, be quiet. Settle down. You know, I think it's interesting. He's asleep in the stern. You know where the stern is. It's the back of the boat. The port bow, the hull, those are going to take some of the beating. But the stern has a tendency to be a little bit more calm. But he's asleep. And I love the fact that his disciples can understand that. We'll talk about that more in a second. But nonetheless, Jesus says to the elements, peace, quiet, hush. Why does he say that? Well, you know, because he's in charge. He's in control. And he knows how it's going to turn out. Keep that thought in the back of your mind as we continue. You see, he's just calmed the storm. But when we read in verse 41, something very interesting happens. Usually when a storm comes through, you wait till that storm kind of passes and makes its mark, and then things start to settle down. But it says immediately the calm came. And the waves stop, and the wind stops blowing. And the disciples say to themselves, even the storm obeys him. Do you remember what's happened so far? You can look at each one of the gospel accounts. At this point, Jesus has done some healing. He's done some work individually with people who are sick or who are lame, and he has done some healing. But this is something they have not seen before. And he hasn't even cast out demons yet. That's about to come. As a matter of fact, they get on the other side of the sea, of the shore, and that's when they're meeting a demon-possessed man. But they said he can control the sicknesses. We've seen that. He can heal those who are broken. We've seen that. But now he's even taking these elements, and he's got them under control. I love the fact that it says, then they became even more afraid. Why would they do that? I mean, they're fearing for their lives because the storm is coming. But now when Jesus settles it down, I would think that's when they go, phew, boy, got that one taken care of. But instead, they became even more afraid. I think there's a realization that the one that we have with us has got power. Ladies and gentlemen, he is with us today. And he hasn't diminished in his power. Are we even still more respectful than we were before? If we follow the apostles' example, we will be. But we don't need to follow the example when he says, why do you have such little faith? What's going on with you guys? Do you not think I can control this? You know this passage, and you know how it turns out, but I want to take you to your psalm books. Remember, this is your number 1 favorite book, is that correct? Take out your number 2 favorite book. Let me see who remembers what that is. That's it. Grab the song book out. And I want you to turn to the song that is patterned off of this text. Master, the tempest is raging. And I want us to take and I want to dissect this song out and compare it with the text. Remember, I told you last week that my objective was to take the next several weeks and talk about this is my song. And I want to look at individual songs. Last week we looked at It Is Well With My Soul, When Peace Like a River. Today we're going to talk about this song, Master, the Tempest is Raging. And we're going to sing the text. Now we're not going to sing it right now. I'll leave that up to Stan to do that if he wants to do that towards the end. Call an audible that way. But we're going to look at this text and we're going to look at this song and we're going to see how do they combine, how do they look, and how do I apply them today. I read the text and I understand that. First verse. Master, the tempest is raging. What is a tempest? What is a tempest? And why is it raging? What does raging mean? Those are terms that we don't use very often in today's vernacular. So if we don't use them, we need to think and say, what does it mean? A tempest, quite frankly, is very simply put, it's a strong, fast, violent windstorm, usually accompanied with rain or hail. So the tempest that they're feeling on the ocean is strong winds, the waves beating on you, perhaps rain, maybe even hail. And they're getting plummeted. And it's raging. Raging means violent fury or anger The ocean's mad. You see the personal elements that the poet is giving to this? The sea is mad. It's angry at me, and it's beating me up. Master, the tempest is raging. The billows, the waves, they're going way up. As a matter of fact, the text says it's filling up my boat. The billows are tossing high. The sky is dark. There's darkness. And there's no help anywhere to be seen. Yeah, there's some other boats out here, but they're not going to do any good for me. And then the next phrase is actually text. Carest thou not that we perish? That's King James Version. To say, do you not even care what's happening to us? Don't you care that we're about to die? Carest thou not that we perish? And then they didn't say this, but we read it in the text. How can you sleep? In a time like this, how can you be asleep? I'm not talking about during the sermon. If you're sleeping in the sermon, that's up to you. I'm talking about the text. How can you be sleeping during this violent storm that's angry and sweeping us and taking our boat down? How can you do that, Jesus? Each moment is threatening that we will die. At any time, we could go under and lose our lives. Do you not even care? We could die in this sea. Verse 2. I think it's interesting when you look at verse 2. As we sing this song, it now becomes more of a personal connection. We've read the text, we've sung the text, if you will, and now the part comes for us as we sing, that we're singing about ourselves. Master, with anguish of spirit, I bow in my grief today. Well, there's another word. I don't know the last time you used the word anguish, but what does that mean? What does it mean to have anguish? You know the experience of it, but ladies and gentlemen, anguish is distress. It's pain. It's suffering. Do you suffer? Do you have times in your life when you're pain and you're hurting? Maybe not physically, maybe emotional. Do you have those times? I told the young people at the University Summit yesterday when I was speaking to them, if you don't, consider yourself blessed. If you do, you know what this life is all about. There are times when we're in distress and we're hurting and we're feeling like we're going to die. Anguish of spirit. I bow in my grief today. The depths of my sad heart, they're troubled to the point that I feel like I'm breaking. And then as we take the same analogy from the text, we sing, wake up. Why are you asleep? It doesn't seem like you even know what's happening. God, do you not realize what I'm dealing with? Wake up! You know he's not sleeping. But the verse continues as we look at this, as we consider there are times when we can't see a way out of this storm. When we can't see how in the world I'm going to make it through this. Because the torrents of sin and of anguish are sweeping over my soul. A torrent is a fast flow of water. And I'm feeling it in the boat. I'm feeling it in the sea of life. And the storm that's raging is killing me. And it's sweeping over my sinking soul. And then just like the disciples, we sing this song, we cry out, I perish. I perish. I'm dying. Oh, hasten. Hasten means hurry. Hurry up and take control because I don't know how much longer I can make it. Hasten and take control. That's the second verse of that song. I've intentionally left out the chorus. We'll come to that in a moment. But then at the third verse, the last verse of this song, we actually are singing the end of the story from Mark chapter 4. And Jesus said, be quiet, peace, hush. And a look at what the terminology of the poetry comes from this. Master, the terror is over. The terror is over. The scariness is done. It's nice out there. We're not sinking after all. And the elements, all of the things that were beating me up, all the things that were happening to me, they've all stopped now. Stay with this, because when we get to the chorus, you're going to understand that element's a little bit better. The elements are sweetly resting. And there's a reflection of the sun in the mirror of the lake. Have you ever seen that before? Have you ever been out by a peaceful river or a lake, and there's no flowing, there's no air, and the sun is reflecting off there? And it's almost like it's a mirror. Honestly, it's almost like a mirror. That's what we're singing in the poetry of this. I'm wondering if that's what the disciples experienced. Maybe the moon was shining in the ocean, in the river, in the lake, and they could see that it's calm now. Earth's sun and the calm lake is mirrored. And what's inside my heart? A sense of heaven, a sense of peace, a sense of control is in my breast, is in my heart. But I like this so much I don't want it to go away. And so we use the word linger, O blessed Redeemer. Stay here a little bit longer. And leave me alone no more. You see, God never leaves us. But how many times in our life do we feel like we've been left alone? How many times do we feel like we're by ourselves? Ladies and gentlemen, always remember this. God never leaves His people. He stays with us. We can walk away from Him. And oftentimes when we do, the storm can become very fierce. But He will not leave us. And with that understanding, I have joy in my heart, so I know I can make it onto heaven. And with joy, I shall make the blessed harbor and rest on the blissful shore. That's just a song that takes Mark chapter 4 and regrafts it into poetry, and we sing it, both for the text, but also for ourselves, with the understanding that when we stay with God, it's going to be okay. But we cannot forget this chorus, because I really believe this is the basis of it. Oh, I want to make sure you understood this too. There's many of our songs that have that same analogy. I was going to give you two of them. When the storm passes by, in the dark of the midnight I've oft hid my face, and the storm howls about me and there's no hiding place. At the crash of the thunder, blessed Lord, hear my cry, keep me safe until the storm passes by. If you don't know that one, you may want to take a look at that song. Or how about this one? O Savior, stay this night with me. Behold, it's eventide. If I cannot commune with Thee and find in Thee my light, the darkness of the world I fear would in my home abide. O Savior, stay this night with me. We have the understanding that God will stay with us. Let's move into the chorus. The winds and the waves shall obey Thy will. Hush! Be still. And then we sing something that maybe you didn't recognize. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've sung this for years. This is one of those old hymns that's been around for a long time. But did you know what you're about to sing in the next line? You're about to say, whether there is a storm that's angry, whether the wrath of the storm-tossed seas. We're talking about the physical part of life, disease and sicknesses that ravage our body. It may be the emotional pain when someone treats me with disrespect or discouragement, and I'm going, this is a storm. Whether the wrath of the storm-tossed seas of life or demons. You're singing this in a moment. And you reference in Ephesians chapter 6. The spiritual warfare that we cannot see, that happens all around us, and we should never be ignorant to it. Because when the devil attacks us, we must be prepared. Demons, whether it's the storms of life, demons, and then one. But ladies and gentlemen, this is so true. Whether the wrath of the storm-tossed seas, or demons, or men, that's us. Do we cause storms in each other's lives? Think for that for a second. Are there things that we do? Are there words that we say? Are there behaviors and attitudes that we have that cause other people to have storms in their lives? If we say, I don't think so, then we're deceiving ourselves. And it may not be intentional. I'm not trying to be mean. That's just the way I am. Well, that's still causing storms. Whether the wrath of the storm-tossed sea, or demons, or men, or you know what, just to make sure we don't miss anything, whatever. Whatever happens. Now stay with the thought process here. The winds and the waves obey God. The elements will obey Him. And whether it's the storm, whether it's the demons that we cannot even see that plague us, whether it's men who we can see, and maybe even we thought were our friends, or at least our acquaintances, or whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All of these elements can cause us distress. All of these elements can cause storms that make us feel like we're going to die. I bow in my grief today. How am I going to make it? How am I going to do it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, with God, peace is right around the corner. And then the chorus ends this way. There's no water that can swallow the ship in which the master of the ocean and the earth lies. You know what that means to me? I have to ask myself, is Jesus in my boat? Do I have Christ in my life? Well, sure I do. Does your life reflect that? I can say it. I can say, yes, I'm a Christian. I was baptized a long time ago, and I know how to do this. But do I live like a child of God? Is Jesus in my boat? When storms come, which you know they will, how will I handle it? Do I think that I'm going to die when the storm comes? No water will swallow your ship if Christ is in your life. Now, if Christ is not in your life, that's another story. But I would encourage you to consider, is Jesus in your vessel? Is He in your heart? Is He in your life? Because if He is, your boat is not going to sink. Now, you may physically lose your life. I understand that. But you will not be taken from the grasp of God as long as Jesus is in your life. You see, hopefully we can take situations like this and we can make them more manifest. Instead of just singing songs and going through them and shutting the page and going to the next one, we need to think about what we're doing. We need to think about what we're singing. And this song will help us to understand there's more to it than just going through the motions. And I dare say those of us who are older really need to be careful with this, because we can get caught up in the routine of what we call rote. Sung it before, I don't even need the book. I don't need the screen, I know that song. Just sing it along. Maybe even in my 4-part harmony. But if I don't think about what I'm singing, I'm missing the opportunity to glorify my God and to edify my brothers and sisters and encourage myself. So we ask the question, who's in the boat? Well, we got the apostles, and we know there's other boats, and Jesus was in the boat. I think I need to change that question for you today. It's not so much as who is in the boat, but who is in your boat? Who do you have in your boat? What kind of people you surround yourself with? Are they people that are working towards heaven? Or are they people who are just kind of making it through life? Are they people who look at this number one book and say, this is my basis and my foundation, and I want to be with them? Or is it the world that says, yeah, whatever? You've got to make sure that whoever you have in your boat is leading you to the blissful shore. But you can have all the good people in the world around you. You can have good, upright people who are kind and compassionate, and people that never even cuss. And they don't do the things that would be vile. And these are good people, but they don't have Christ. Because you see, if you don't have Jesus in your boat, ladies and gentlemen, you've got reason to fear. If you don't have Jesus as the bedrock of your life, how are you going to make the storms? When you consider your life, when you consider your boat, I would encourage you to make sure you know who's on your manifest. Make sure you know who's part of your life. And make sure that the number one passenger is Jesus Christ and Him crucified. If you've not made that decision and you need to do that, we need to have a conversation. And we need to talk about taking the steps towards baptism so that you can be a child of God and be born again. If you've done that already, but you've kind of left Him on the side, Lord, you stay here. I'm going to float over here for a little while. I'll be back. I'll come pick you up later, Lord. That's not the way it works. If you've left Him because He's not left you, and you need Him back, this is your chance. This is your opportunity. If there's anything we can do to bring you closer to having Jesus in your boat, take that step now as we stand together and sing.